Good evening, all, and welcome to the Toolbox India 10th year celebratory event. My name is Sriya, and I will be your host for the evening. We're so happy to have you here. Um, we would also absolutely love to have you all share your comments with us throughout the event. You can use this chat box or our social media handles linked in the chat to share your experience and thoughts with us. Just to also mention that this entire event will be recorded. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us here at Out of the Box 2021 as Toolbox India celebrates 10 years of volunteering and change making. You are here today because you have been instrumental in this decade-long journey, whether you're a volunteer, a nonprofit partner, a Toolbox India team member, a corporate partner, or a well-wisher. Your support has added great value as Toolbox has evolved and adapted over the years, even in the face of challenges. And there have been challenges. We are all currently living through an enormous challenge and doing our best to adapt and overcome under these conditions. As we fight through global adversity, we take the time today to pause and reflect as the world as we know it swiftly changes around us. For us at Toolbox India, what is brought to the fore at this time is the role that civil society and the individuals within it play in this world. How humanity has stepped up across geographies, how persistent and audacious we have been in facing trying circumstances, and how volunteering has been a fundamental and essential part of this. And volunteering is at the heart of what Toolbox India does. 10 years ago, Toolbox was brought into India. Today, we want to look back at all that went into making this happen. This is a moment for us to celebrate a decade, but also to reflect further on our role, our values, and our place in this world. So, without further ado, let us begin this evening. We have a lot in store for you for the next hour or so. And to start us off, we have Sameer Bhakri saying a few words. Just to introduce Sameer Bhakri has been associated with Toolbox India as a volunteer and advisor since our early years, a mentor at Mentoria since 2015. Samir has had a successful corporate career for over 3 decades. A philanthropist and a biker, Samir has helped students discover themselves and the right career for them at Mentoria. Apart from all this, Samir has a wit drier than any wine that there is. So let's listen in to what Samir has to say. Over to you, Samir.
Wow, Shriya, now that's such a beautiful introduction. It's completely moved me to tears. So I'll keep my camera off while I compose myself and also, more important, mop the floor that's got flooded with my tears. I haven't heard such kind and generous words in my entire life. By the way, may I just request if you can email this introduction to me? Might help my family save time and effort for my obituary. Because I've
Absolutely.
recently realized that while my wife is already planning for it, she might need some such assistance, of the words, the achievements, and things like that. I'll tell you why. Every month, she requests me to put her 6 clothes cupboards in order. Sorry, 5.5. Point 5 is mine. I'm a Virgo, that's why. So just about a week ago, while I was organizing her clothes, I came across this photo that fluttered down from one of the cupboards. Now, while I intend to ask her why she chose this particular picture of mine, actually, maybe now I understand why she keeps commenting, "Such big eyes you have, Grandma," and why the year or the decade is so specifically already mentioned. And oh, yes, by the way, I turned it around and I saw at the back was mentioned Mumbai Samachar, postage stamp size, and rupees 650 on the back of the photo. But what I haven't been able to decipher is this very intriguing acronym GRTBR at the bottom. I've tried, I some of the friends I've asked, I don't know why, surprisingly, they've either hastily changed the subject or made an excuse and run away. Can anyone in this August audience even though we are in September, help in deciphering what this acronym is, what it stands for? Oh, great. Sandeep Naik is messaging. Yes, Sandeep? What? No, 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 no. No, 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 you're mistaken. No, Sandeep, it can't be. Are you sure it stands for good riddance for bad rubbish? Too bad rubbish? And here, I thought it was, words like generous, resplendent, terrific. Shit, is that why they say ghar ki murgi dal barabar? But I guess if a Wharton alumni is saying it, it must be true. And actually, think of it. Aren't we all actually all the time trying to project a different persona to everyone else while our realities is something else? Trying to make everyone believe we are God's gift to humankind when we actually believe we are inferior to everyone around. Take Toolbox, for example. To seduce the audience into attending this event, 100 plus now, they put up this photo of mine. This is what I looked like 20 years ago. Whereas what I look like now is this on the right. I'm actually thoroughly confused about whether I should put on my camera or expose Toolbox's subterfuge. But given my very high set of values and being a Kishore Kumar fan, I'll bow to the wisdom in one of his songs, सच्चाई छुप नहीं सकती बनावट के असूलों से कि खुशबू आ नहीं सकती कागज के फूलों से, and reveal myself. Hey, hi everybody. This is me. And Shreya, actually, just to let you know, I introduced myself as just a salesman. But for this specific audience, I'd also like to say that I am a megalomaniac, consumed with cynicism and hubris, which basically means you're up for some outrageously outlandish comments that I'm going to be making. And Vijay obviously is to be blamed for this. One, because we all love externalizing all our issues. So nobody is responsible for all the misery that exists in our life but other people. But more importantly, is, I've had to swallow a huge lot of humiliation for all you guys. When Toolbox approached me first, straight away Vijaya said, you know what, we'd like you to be the opening speaker. But let me tell you, we already contacted a stand-up comedian and his prices were too high. So, we want something fun. So the only other joker we could think of was you. I was so stunned. And then she said, you know what, we'll also pay you $2,000. I said, what? What are you talking about? $2,000? Joker? She said, so, my ego was obviously hurt. And I said, Vijay, what are you talking about? What does $2,000 get you in today's day and age? You know what she said? She said, listen, dude, I am an amateur stand-up comedian myself. And if you are going to show any nakras or anything, take it or leave it. This is all I have to offer. And if you don't agree, I'll just do it myself. So to spare all of you the embarrassment of seeing her perform, I decided to accept the 2K. Okay, one sec. I'm getting some messages on the chat box. Charles? No, Charles. It's Megalomaniac, not Magneto. Magneto is X-Men. Yeah, don't confuse. Justin, Megatron. Justin, Megatron is from the Transformers movie. I am calling myself a megalomaniac. I'm amazed that with such a bunch toolboxes, I even survived for a decade. One wonders though about all the change on Toolbox's communication recently. Have you guys noticed the rebranding? No? What are you talking about? They've rebranded themselves to Out of the Box instead of Toolbox. When I first read it, I was thinking those poor 150 founders for whom capacity building has been initiated by Vijaya and her team must be thinking, So for a decade, there were tools and they were in a box. And now those tools are out of the box. So what was used when so-called capacity building was, being implemented for us? Talk about confused positioning and communication. Well, one thought that constantly plagues me is why is everyone so serious all the time? Irrespective of whether one works in the corporate sector, and I've worked there for about a quarter century, or the nonprofit sector where I've been associated with the sector for about a dozen years, everyone seems to believe that the weight of the world is entirely on their shoulders. And therefore, life has to be taken so extremely seriously all the time. And we all have to behave like clones of Jesus Christ, carrying the cross and wearing a crown of thorns and constantly muttering, "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." But think about this. We are all but mere indistinguishable specks in the existing and ever expanding multiverse. Impressed, right? Yeah, I got this by watching the Spider-Man animation movie and the Avengers series and also Agents of Shield and things like that. Come on, guys, we have but one life, okay? And if you're not living it happily, the way you want, doing what you love, investing time only with those you love, what's the point in trying to be avatars of Jesus Christ? Frankly, no one cares, as they're also busy carrying their own crosses. Also, think about it. Irrespective of what our own situation is, given that we seek to be happy all the time, why don't we just grow ourselves a bigger funny bone? Search for and create opportunities to smile, be happy, look at the funnier side of things, and also, more important, make everyone around us happier. What if the entire social sector, instead of chalking up or measuring lives impacted in a day, we changed our objective to how many smiles did I put on people's faces? Or how many people did I get to laugh out loud today? Along with obviously positively impacting the lives of those lesser fortunate ones. Wouldn't the world be such an amazing place if all of us could just put our egos aside and make it our lifelong mission to be happy and make others smile and laugh? And speaking of one life, I must share one such example of people just not appreciating how fortunate they are. Sridhar, for example, I'm going to reveal a personal fact about him. He suffers from IDTS. Do you know what IDTS is? Obviously, you don't. Only I know such things. It's called Irritable Digestive Tract Syndrome. So one day, Sridhar walks into a bar in New York, walks up to the barman and says, "May I have a glass of water, please?" You know what the barman does? Takes out a rifle. And Sridhar, after about 20 seconds, says, "Thank you." Both of them smile at each other and leave. What happened? Anybody? He had hiccups. And the barman showed him a gun which scared the shit out of Sridhar. And he was so impressed. He said, "Man, I've been suffering from IDTS my whole life, hiccuping all the time, and people think I'm forever drunk. This is a damn good solution." So, you know what he did? Came back to India, did some jugaad, bought a gun, and fortunately for him, he took the bullets out and he told his beautiful wife, Anuradha, "Next time I have hiccups, I'm going to sit in a chair, close my eyes, but before that, you point the gun at me." And so dutifully, the next time he started hiccuping, he gave her the gun and she pointed it at him. He shut his eyes and he heard two clicks. The poor guy till today doesn't know that it was actually the gun being clicked, but because there were no bullets, he survives. Speaking of good fortune, Do you know how, where, and when Toolbox was conceptualized? You don't. I don't know if all the team members even know that. The two key words that you need to remember is Vijaya and charcoal. Charcoal is very important. Now, why charcoal? Essentially because Vijaya, since she was much younger, I use the relative term younger, used to love charcoal painting. Unfortunately, the connection goes to a different form altogether. Balaji, for example, the first time that Vijaya called me home for a meal, said, Sam, make sure about one thing. Do not accept her invitation if it's going to be Indian food because the chapatis are going to be charred and the food is going to taste like coal. So I've always met Vijaya in a coffee shop. That's the other reason. But, as soon as she got married, she had this urge to discover herself. And, so she told Balaji, I love charcoal painting. I want to go out into the world and discover myself and know who I am and so on and so forth. So she had a cousin in Pennsylvania. She flew across there. Balaji, obviously being the great soul that he had, said, जा सिमरन सॉरी जा विजय जा जी ले अपनी जिंदगी. Now Vijay, to earn some money, because the cousin sister said, listen, as Americans say, there are no free lunches or dinners or breakfasts. So she joined a bakery to augment her income and discover herself as a charcoal artist. And she was given a cycle. So she used to put all the breads and everything at the back of the cycle. There's a carrier where you put stuff and you string it and so on and so forth. That continued for a few days. Unfortunately, one day there was a bolt that came loose and all the bread fell off. She tried, she couldn't really figure out what to do. Fortunately, Sandeep was hanging around there as a handyman, trying to augment his income while trying to meet the high fees of Wharton. And he wasn't getting a TA or an RA, so and his lifestyle demanded that the income ought to be much higher. So he had some kind of tools in a box that he would go around with, and he fixed Vijaya's cycle because he saw all of that stuff falling down. Vijaya was so happy that instantly she broke out into song. Can anyone guess what that song was? Come on, it's simple. Sandeep is twirling his pencil. You ought to know that. The song that she sang, because Sandeep fixed her cycle and the bread would not fall off any longer, was आजकल पाँव ज़मीन पर नहीं पड़ते मेरे. So with all that nonsense, ladies and gentlemen, have fun, smile. There's no need to be serious all the time. Now that you know when, where, and how Toolbox was conceptualized, I'll hand over the proceedings to the new out-of-the-box team. You don't know them? You'll get to know them.
Thank you so much, Sami. That was simultaneously entertaining and profound, and a great way to start this event.
Thank you.
We we will now hear from two very special keynote speakers who have had a long friendship with Toolbox India, and who better to introduce them than our very own Vijaya Balaji. The floor is yours, Vijaya.
Thank you, Shreya. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, for all of you joining in tonight from across the world on road. I can see Karthik right here, who's driving down from Raigad. Um, there's so much that one would want to say, but keeping a check on the time, I am just about to speak about two people who have been very, very special to me over the years and have been integral in supporting Toolbox and in me as I made my foray into the impact sector. Uh, the relationship that I have with them is in a way entwined with the journey that I've had with Toolbox India and as a CEO here. my dear friend Nagma, whom all of you know as the CEO at Ilgif Foundation, someone with whom I have the highest of respect, a colleague with whom we've had the opportunity to really work together and curate some really exciting programs, and we continue to do that. But more than anything else, in the process, we built a friendship which has stood firm and became sounding boards for each other. It's almost a given that she is somebody who will be there at every toolbox event and has championed us over the years. The other person whom I would like to introduce is, well, he is the founder of Toolbox. Uh, I don't know if he is my boss, if he is my mentor, but one of the first things that Charles had told me 10 years ago when I joined Toolbox was that um, he said that, Vijaya, I'm not going to be very much in India all the time, but Sandeep is here, and it is very important that you build a good working relationship with Sandeep. You're not going to get too much time, but when you do get his time, he is somebody who will give you just the right kind of advice that you need. I think it's needless to say, I think Sandeep has been somebody who has helped me steer Toolbox. He's always helped me envisage a larger canvas, nudging me, but more than anything, has allowed me to make mistakes, has been gracious about them. And I am truly, truly fortunate to say that it's become easier and less intimidating to talk to him over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the keynote speakers at our 10th year event, Nagma Mullah and Sandeep Nayak. Over to you, Nagma.
Oh, I get to go first. So on this very special day, I think I have the one thing to say. Vijaya, I'm feeling very old today. I think Toolbox is 10, and I've known Toolbox and the brilliant team and Sandeep and you for 8 years now. I was just thinking about it. We have, it is what you are one of the first few brilliant things that I saw in the sector when we went, I think, way back in 2013 when Sandeep and Vijaya had come and, to speak to us about capacity building. And I also remember very clearly that it was a time when most people blinked when they heard capacity building, and most people, tried to have a polite face and have a polite conversation while trying to understand. And I also remember the painful but very gracious conversation that would go on, where Sandeep would pitch in, but Vijaya would pitch in, and the concept of building capacity for organizations and the brilliance of a well organized marriage between the corporate and the development sector, what could be the outcomes of it, was something that you would try to explain to an audience that was not ready at that time. So it was an idea that was born, thankfully, before the time came, and so that it was ready to take off when people began to comprehend the magic of great individuals meeting great organizations. So with that, many congratulations on a brilliant 10 years. I have been also privy to the many small projects that would go on. For those who wouldn't understand the development sector at that time, it would seem, why are we doing so much of hard work for something that is so small? Because unfortunately, the world understands numbers, the world understands scale. So today, when we're discussing driving change and impact in the 10 years that Toolbox has been around, I'm feeling like a very proud aunt, if not like a mother. And this mad woman with her mad team has pulled off a coup of sorts in the 10 years. And it's a very proud moment for me to be present here as this brilliant vehicle has turned 10 years old. When we speak of driving change and impact, we tend to think of earth shattering, life altering, needle moving efforts, millions of people, millions of dollars, learning outcomes that have multiplied, large efforts that have mobilized. But real life is very rarely like that. It takes many microcosms to bring meaning to something. And Toolbox was that place where those microcosms came together and did their little bits. And in this world of hyperboles and mega announcements, where big is best and small is inconsequential, Toolbox showed us all that every hour counts, every effort counts, and every volunteer counts. And it put heart and soul into bringing meaning to efforts of these hundreds of volunteering projects. And I would watch in awe, seeing how these volunteers would come on calls and with such dignity and diligence interact with organizations that were too small, that were sitting in different areas, whether urban or rural, and try to break the problem into small parts and try to explain how the solutions would work. It introduced these brilliant individuals in corporate sectors to an alternative universe. I've been on calls where a techie is spending hours with a CBO leader to understand tech challenges in maybe rural Bihar or somewhere like that. And I've also been on those calls where a senior manager, while building strategy for a small NGO, would end up learning some massive life lessons on empathy, inclusiveness, and community building. So yes, Toolbox is that place where things happened, where things happened very quietly. The world shifted very quietly for a chosen few. And those of us who were part of those chosen few know how lucky we were to experience those little moments of magic that Toolbox brought into the lives of individuals who cared enough to come together no matter what background they were from. So I'm very proud of what Vijaya has pulled off, what her team has pulled off, and for the brilliant idea, really, that we have to credit Sandeep and Charles for. That idea that came much ahead for when the world was ready to listen to it. But thank God for that idea, and thank God for the 10 years that happened. So with that, congratulations, and I hope you all have a brilliant evening.
Thank you, Nagma. Over to you, Sandeep.
So Vijaya told me I have 3.5 minutes. And anyone that has worked with Vijaya knows that there's only one boss, and it's Vijaya. And so I just want to make sure that's very clear to whoever is attending this particular conference. But this is a very emotional moment for me because 10 years is a long time. When Charles and I talked about this back in my office in Mumbai, I remember 2007, 2008, we really didn't know where this was going to go. And we just said, unless we try it out, we'll never know. And that's when we put things into action. And Toolbox has been like a baby. It was very painful to give birth to Toolbox. The toddler years were exceptionally difficult. As Nagma mentioned, nobody believed us. We tried to throw all kinds of tantrums, but people were just not ready to listen. But slowly and surely, we got a footing. We started crawling. We stood up. We started walking. And now, as a 10-year-old, Toolbox has come into its own individuality, its own personality, and it's really ready to take on the world. And just to see that happen in front of our eyes has been just amazing. And I still get goosebumps when I talk about it. In my for-profit job, I serve on lots of boards. And I remember just a few weeks ago, I was on the CSR committee of one of my boards. And someone said, hey, as we think about our CSR efforts, should we speak with this one organization that's doing fantastic work in capacity building? And I said, sure, which organization is it? And they said, oh, it's Toolbox. I don't know if you've heard about it. And that, like a proud parent, it's just amazing when things go around and they come to you, when the person sitting across the table doesn't even know that you are in any shape or form involved with it. So it's a really proud moment, and this would not have been possible without my partner, Charles, with whom we ideated this back in the days. And really what gave Toolbox its wings and taught it to walk and run is really the force of Vijaya. And anybody that has worked with Vijaya knows what that feels like. And so the best thing to do with Vijaya is stay out of her way. And she will pull you in when she needs to, but the best thing is stay out of the way, because she will get where she wants to get faster and in the most efficient manner. The COVID-19 situation has brought to fore a very important element that we have always believed in as Toolbox, which is every individual needs to contribute. And we saw that in spades through the unfortunate COVID situation where people just had to step out of their comfort zone and help their family members, extended family members, neighbors, communities. And that was happening across the board. And that's really the essence of Toolbox. It's volunteering at its core. Each one of us can contribute something that we have. This is not something that we need to reach deep into ourselves. This is something that naturally comes to us. Each one of us is good at something, and we know what that thing is, and just bring that to the table and contribute towards an organization or towards a group that can benefit from that skill. So pioneering the skill volunteering is something that Toolbox did back in the days. It's come to the fore right now. It is an exceptionally important aspect of what we do. And that's what we fundamentally believe in, as to how do you make volunteering so inclusive that in your everyday walk of life, it just becomes something that's second nature. And I think that's what's really going to help scale this organization. Growth for the sake of growth is absolutely useless unless it's inclusive growth. Only inclusive growth is the most productive growth. And I believe that at Toolbox, we fundamentally believe in that. And we would love, I see tons of people on this call with the number of hands on deck that we have, with the kind of organizations that we are currently working with. If we can't make this happen, who will? And so the onus that we carry, the baggage that we carry is just very, very high, and we cannot afford to slip up. So the responsibility that Toolbox has, each and every volunteer has, each and every organization that we are supporting has, is just tremendous. And Toolbox success could not have happened unless the nonprofits that we worked with actually put their faith and their trust in us. So I would really like to thank all the nonprofits that have been with us through this journey, because without your faith and trust, we wouldn't have been able to achieve anything. On this day of the 10th year anniversary, the next challenge I want to throw to Toolbox and to Vijaya and the team is we have done what Toolbox could do for India. The question is, what can Toolbox do for Bharat? We need to penetrate the belly of the Indian market. We need to penetrate the rural towns, the villages, the tier 2, tier 3 places. That's where the need is the most. And how do we take Toolbox today with everyone that's on this call and everyone that we have touched? And how do we really amplify this? Not 5x or 10x, but 100x, where in 10 years, we would be having our anniversary and talking about how Toolbox is today touching at least half of the nonprofits in India in some shape or form, and creating the change that we need to bring towards the nonprofit in India. So onwards and upwards, and I would love to be the part of the journey for the next 10 years and see where Toolbox can get. So congratulations to everyone, and thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. So when we were conceptualizing the 10th year celebrations, we reflected on what we really wanted to talk about today. We didn't want just another film celebrating what we were doing, but in our reflections, what did strike a chord with us was the opportunity that Toolbox has had to meet fantastic individuals who encouraged us, who became our supporters, and whom we admired. And thus came the idea of a film focusing on what drives these individuals, where they find their purpose. And over the course of the evening, we will be presenting to you segments of this film on what driving change is really about. And yes, so on that note, we bring to you our first segment.
A big congratulations to Vijaya and your team at Toolbox for this 10-year milestone.
To describe Toolbox India in one word, I could think about innovative.
Toolbox was literally our first institutional engagement, which continues up to date. And I'm obviously very fond of Toolbox and Vijay and all the work that we've done together.
Initially, I did approach them as paying it forward and doing good. I was soon enough to realize that I'm taking and absorbing so much more.
I think there was a recognition, and for me it was an imperfect recognition, but a recognition nonetheless that we are where we are because we occupy positions of privilege.
I'm really happy to become a part of the celebration today. creating social impact to me is playing beyond one's own individual strengths. Social impact calls for social collaboration, and I see this as a journey that we cannot embark on alone.
India has a population of more than 1 billion, and even if one person tries to make a difference, that will be 1 million lives change. Isn't it amazing, right?
It's really about creating a mindset of abundance and building people to people connections.
Change for us at Jai Vakil means one child at a time. It means a triad of therapists, educators, and parents working hand in hand, ensuring that every child is no longer defined by their disabilities, but is able to find their best life today and beyond.
When I started in 1994, little did I know what I was getting into. There was a little dream of making a difference to few children and raise them like my own.
In all of my work, I try to create great environments and also empower people with the tools and resources they need to just, have a better life.
We believe that empowering small business owners has the potential to change the lives of people by opening markets, lifting participation, and providing an opportunity for businesses all across the world. We make an impact by enabling digital commerce for businesses in the simplest and most effective way by removing all barriers for businesses.
In terms of creating social impact, the whole idea is to create a community wherein we travel for a purpose, track for a purpose actually. And we've been partially successful about it because we've been able to collect more than 800,000 kilograms of waste so far. And in last year, we made our first waste collection center wherein the collected waste we'll further segregate it and utilize it to make it a part of value chain.
We believe in balancing the needs of the planet and the people, and we believe that an integrated model achieving prosperity for both is the only way forward. As we all know, the sector works in silos, and if we have to achieve integration as a family, as a foundation, we are going to need a lot of patience.
It means to me that everybody's rights are served. Everybody gets whatever they need to develop themselves and to sustain themselves meaningfully in the society.
The poor vulnerable girl from a marginalized background do not need to reach her full potential so that her country's economy can grow. She needs to do so because it is her right.
We can create a social impact as individuals by of course taking action alone, and besides finding like-minded people for things that we cannot do alone. However, to find those friends is challenging for us. In that sense, an organization like Toolbox has a great role to play.
It's so great to hear from all of our supporters and partners, and a privilege really to be able to draw our inspiration from their words. We heard from Sandeep and Nagma earlier on unlocking social good. Let us now hear another essential perspective, the capital perspective. And to speak on this, I'd like to welcome Charles and Karthik. Charles Antoine Janssen is an impact investor focused on healthcare access. In 2010, Charles co-founded Kois, a global impact investing firm active in healthcare, education and skilling, and living environments. He is a managing partner of Kois and the CIO of Health Quad. Charles is the co-founder of Toolbox Belgium and Toolbox India. Karthik Desai grew up in Delhi, Geneva, and New York and graduated from the Wharton School and the University of Columbia. He started his career as a management consultant in the United States. In 2014, he founded Asha Impact, one of India's most respected impact finance organizations. Apart from this, he has been a mentor to many nonprofits in the inclusion, digital media, and mental health space, and an angel investor in social enterprises working in underserved parts of our country. So without further ado, over to you, Charles.
Thank you. Thank you, Shreya. So in 2004, we had created Toolbox in Belgium with the idea of bringing business skills to nonprofits in order to scale them. And in 2007, I landed in India and had discovered that India had 3.3 million NGOs and obviously social needs that are vast. And as I was wondering how I could bring a little drop in that ocean, I met Sandeep. And Sandeep had a huge smile, as you all know, whatever the circumstance was that we were talking about. The more the problem seemed complicated, the more he would look at his ring with a big Om symbol that I was highly intrigued about as a yogi. And so after a few hours of business discussion, I said, what do you think about nonprofits in India? What do you think about trying to scale their impact by bringing business skills and human development skills to them? He said he just looked up to the sky, laughed and said, well, you have to try. And basically that was the foundation of Toolbox India. And as easy as was that creation, it felt that Sandeep was just the man to take away hurdle after hurdle. And Toolbox would never be where it is today without his relentless enthusiasm, his clarity of thought, his convincing open heart and brilliant mind. So Sandeep, it's really, really, really been such a privilege to be on this journey with you, and I can only thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, as Sandeep said, there have been the toddler years were pretty rough. We were going from mild success to mild success, and each one was one first step. But things were not really coming into place until one day where everything changed. Arrived a lady with curly hair. She didn't yet have the insurance of the self-confidence of an elephant and the strength of a bull that she today has. But there was always there an open mind, a super sensitive approach to issues, a dedication to contribute to India like no one had ever done, and a determination that was steadfast. And that really was the day where the door of Toolbox was opened and where the benefits of the Toolbox methodology were brought to India. So Vijaya, ever since, I had the impression that, you know, the keys were in your hand, that the management was in the best CEO's hold of possible, and all the growth and potential that we're seeing here, with Sandeep already promising us 100x in 10 years, it's all thanks to you. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Vijaya. I'm supposed to say a few sensible words on capital allocation, and I already am beyond my 3.5 minutes, so I'll be very, very brief. As an impact investor and a blended finance structure for social organizations, we may be in charge of managing capital and disbursing capital and looking for scale and looking for growth. But no scale, no growth, no societal impact is possible if there isn't the right people with the right skill sets. And Toolbox is all about equipping the right people with the right skill sets. And that is far more important than any amount of capital if we are to do any change of scale to some of the needs of India. So I'm deeply convinced that however rich with capital the social impact sector may be in India, skill sets and toolboxes needs are at the core and will remain at the core of its flourishing. So thank you very much to all of you who've trusted us. Thank you to all of you who've joined in as volunteers. And thanks to all the partners without which Toolbox wouldn't be what it is today.
Thank you, Charles. Over to you, Karthik.
Firstly, thank you very much, Vijaya, Charles, Sandeep. It's really a pleasure to be here. I wanted to talk to you guys today about the power of coincidences and tell the story of how I met Vijaya. I was in the mountains with my best friend about a few months ago in the town of Rishikesh, spending some time with my family and being between jobs. I recently joined COIS, as you all know, and Vijaya called me. We got connected, and I think we realized we had a lot of common interests. And one of my interests is incubating small startups and NGOs in the mountains and in underserved regions and in conflict regions, in Srinagar, in Ladakh, in Jammu, in the Northeast. And that's one coincidence. At that same time, I was talking to Charles separately, about COIS. And thirdly, someone called Mr. Amit Chandra called me up separately. He's been a mentor, he's been a friend. And he casually mentioned, he's like, hey, there's an organization called Toolbox. They're doing amazing work. You should talk to them. And fourthly, there's a gentleman with whom I had worked at Merrill Lynch in the past called Harsh, who has been a volunteer for Toolbox. And I think he's also a healthcare entrepreneur. And Charles is interested in speaking to you about investment. So, I've read this book called The Celestine Prophecy. And I really, I don't know how many of you have read that book, but it talks about the power of coincidences. So there's clearly something amazing and beautiful going on here. And I think the larger point about capacity building is obviously something that as venture capitalists or those who focus more on the investing side, we realize when you invest in a company, you then have to build their capacity. Especially in early stage investing, you're investing more in people and products and less in business models and markets. So we know that people need talent, they need financing, there's so many aspects to training. And how do you bring that into the not-for-profit sector is something that Toolbox has been doing amazingly. I myself have been a failed entrepreneur, and I ran an NGO once called WhatsApp Bharat. And I remember that my best moments were when I was getting some small incubation support. At that time from Dasra and from Village Capital. It was their first ever program. When I became an entrepreneur again and set up Asha Impact, the investing side was not easy, but it was natural. And working with investors, setting up a VC fund, setting up a think tank is not easy for a 35-year-old. And there again, we got incubated by A.T.E. Chandra Foundation, by Amit again, saying that, here's a capacity building grant. And this is basically what we do for a living. We do impact investing, but in our personal capacity, we try to mentor younger folks to do great things in life. And look, capacity building has to be extended. We know that, right? So as I mentioned, one can focus on underserved regions, underserved markets, like mountains, conflict zones, and things which don't fall into a neat sectoral bucket, like education, ag, health, right? So these are issues like governance, like media, like mental health, like gender, like various things, Charles has made me realize can be financed. Refugees, look what's happening in Afghanistan, or any parts of the world, Burma or Tibet or Syria, or what else? Dignity of labor. It applies to so many different constructs, from construction workers to anyone who's not being treated fairly in their job. So these are all social issues, and they're all bankable. Even though some people don't believe that, that's what blended finance is about. But you also need to create talent and capacity around that in a very meaningful, robust way. And the networks have to all link up. So it's also wonderful to see the types of folks on this call, from Nagma to Charles and Sandeep to Samir and and of course the team at Toolbox. So congratulations to all of you. I did want to just briefly talk about three overarching lessons, which I think are these are all actually my contextual remarks, but I'll stop after this. Which is, what are the three key lessons? You talk about capital and all of that. So there's no point rehashing what all of us already know. What is impact investing? What is blended finance? What is incubation? What is entrepreneurship? And to me, those three lessons and three things that one can think about are the following. Number one, defining impact, scale, and innovation, right? We use these words a lot, but what do they really mean? So there's obviously talk around defining impact. Has anyone thought about defining scale or defining innovation? How do you choose between the two? What does it really mean? So that's question number one. Right? And organizations like Toolbox can think about that. Second is radical tri-sector collaboration, right? Radical collaboration, and by tri-sector, we mean government, markets, and civil society, because the real action often happens at the intersection of these three, and very few people are willing to engage with that. People in business want to focus on business, people in policy want to focus on policy, people in the not-for-profit sector sometimes have their own biases, but it's where the linkages happen, the really interesting things happen. And I believe that organizations like Toolbox and others who are at that intersection can help figure out and help their entrepreneurs navigate those linkages. And the final point, obviously, is leveraging the full capital spectrum. And I think this understanding needs to start becoming more and more clear that capital is really on a spectrum. And a very simplistic way of looking at it is you have impact investing, right, which purports to give both financial and social return equally. But on the right of that, you have ESG, right, which is also there, which is large pools of private capital which want to come in and be more impactful. But it's always going to be finance first. And then on the left side, you have impact first, which is philanthropic pools of capital which want to be more strategic. And that's where blended finance has a role to play. So I think every entrepreneur needs to understand that, particularly not-for-profit entrepreneurs, particularly mid-sized not-for-profits. And now with the social stock exchange coming into the mix and all of these things that people have talked about, impact measurement, regulation, capital enablement, it's all happening. Capital is coming in, regulations are there, impact is there. So it's like a beautiful time for organizations like Toolbox to really now take it up to the next level. And I'm very excited to see that. So thank you. I'm very privileged and honored to be invited here. And really looking forward to seeing what work you guys will continue to do next. And congratulations on your 10th year anniversary.
Thank you, Karthik, for your insightful words. Speaking of driving change is not easy. The constant uncertainties and anxieties and frustrations are unending, and they come from unexpected corners. So with that, let us resume hearing on how people continue to be relentless in what they set out to do. Presenting to you the second segment of our film.
India in the next 10 years, I would love to see it as a hub for inclusive growth, where we actually have a stake and a seat for all kinds, with all kinds of strengths.
Where nobody has to suffer any want. Whatever their needs, their rights are being served adequately.
Where everyone is able to live a life of dignity. Everyone has access to resources to meet their basic needs of food, shelter, quality healthcare, and education. No one is left behind due to inequality and discrimination based on caste, class, gender, and religion. And we all are living in peace and harmony.
We need to evolve into more mature models of well-being for our nation, where we are not, wiping out the individual entities and the beauty in the diversity that we have in our country.
Together, let's shape a world that chooses love over hate so that we can move closer to achieving what's foremost for us all, a just, diverse, and inclusive world where not just a few, but all of us belong.
This will be driven by the younger generation. This will be driven by the adolescents and the young adults who are our future for tomorrow. And when that happens, you will find that half the population of this country would have reached their full potential. I live to see. I hope to see that happen soon.
People always think that these issues in the society will only be solved by national policy changes, government intervention, and their action as one person doesn't matter much. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Think about it. If every single one of us watching this today help one child, feed one hungry, help one needy, and out of these, even if 100 people watching this do it, bring it into action, we have implanted the seed of change to change 100 lives for better just now. This is how change starts. It starts with one person. It starts with you going out of your way to help someone. It starts with a mindset. And it also starts with joining a machinery of change such as Toolbox.
Driving change really does require people to come together, and this video really does represent the tiniest fraction of the universal help that we had from our supporters. We will now be pausing for a 5-minute break. We have so much more in store for you this evening. Still to come, our volunteers jam and the highlight of the evening, the Toolbox 10th year table read. So stay tuned, folks, and we shall start session 2 in 5 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, for segment 2 of the evening. We'll be speaking to our volunteers a little bit. Our volunteers are instrumental to our organization and to the work we're trying to do here. While we understand the challenges of driving skilled volunteering, we also see what it has meant to our volunteers. So let us now hear how volunteering has left them changed and what has been their biggest takeaways. Presenting Olga, Satvik, and Nishant.
Right, I'll kick it off. So the English dictionary states the definition of volunteer as a person who freely offers to undertake a task. But for me, it means so much more. Through volunteering, I've been able to learn a few things. One, I understand the world around me better, not just this tiny bubble where I belong, which is filled with the latest Marvel movie, Maroon 5 song, or a Manchester United win, or even the expanded worldview that I have, enriched by news headlines and meaningful interactions, but also to the grim realities of social and economic inequity that exists around me. Two, it's helped me become a change agent. Growing up, I had accepted that this was the world order. Some of us were just luckier than others. We could go to private schools, we have smartphones, and the likes. But through volunteering, I have realized that it doesn't really have to be. That we can create systemic change. We can influence stakeholders and processes, and we can make a difference. And I didn't really need recognition. It just had to do good. And this has really fundamentally changed the way I think. Three, I have become grateful for all that I have. It has definitely helped me put my life in perspective. I've become more thankful for the opportunities that I have, and I don't really hyperventilate about all the little things that can go wrong, be it trivial things like waking up late in the morning, or big things like getting the job of my dreams. It's all really nothing in comparison. And finally, four, it really influences my everyday life. When I put these at the core of my value system, I seek for ways to make the world around me better. I investigate the social impact of my company's operations. I try and pick the most environmental friendly mode of transport. And I really try to spend some time that I have freely available to give back to the community. In conclusion, while volunteering is meant to and does create positive external change, I think it changes so much more intrinsically and definitely changed me for the better. With that, I hand it over to Olga.
Thank you, Selvik. So, in a world where individualism, nationalism, and xenophobia are prevalent, there isn't a bigger act of resistance than volunteering, getting involved, caring for those who in the lottery of birth weren't as privileged as us. Through volunteering, I was able to know about the living conditions of people who, due to their personal, social, and political identities, face neglect, inequalities, and discrimination on a daily basis. Although my own privileges prevent me from fully to understand what they feel, I have made it a life purpose to volunteer for organizations or collectives that look to empower, create awareness, or promote behavioral changes in support of the people in need. Volunteering changed my life. It gave me a sense of belonging and purpose. I am very grateful for each volunteering experience I have had and the amazing people I have been able to meet on the way. In concluding, I'd like to say I strongly believe that if we I strongly believe we'd be a lot more kind and tolerant of each other as a human race if we all volunteered, even just for a few days every month. Now, over to Nishant.
Thank you, Olga. So I started my volunteering journey long time ago in college when I decided to teach 6-year-old kids. Back then, I did not have any big goals in my mind, but I just wanted to make a small difference in the life of a bunch of kids. But that first experience made me feel very satisfied and it helped me gain the motivation to find extra time to invest in other social causes. So, from helping and supporting a childcare center with one midday meal, I evolved my methods of volunteering and I have worked with a few in nonprofits help them write their fundraising strategies. So there was a time when I used to think whether I had enough time to volunteer. And that phase has gone. And now it has become a part of my life. It has become part of my DNA. But no matter how busy I am, I will find time to complete my week by volunteering in some or the other activity. And all of this has happened because of the oneness that I feel with the pool of change drivers and the social cause for which I work. At the same time, this journey has been highly rewarding because I came across very passionate individuals who were making collective efforts to bring changes in the lives of the underserved. I have interacted with nonprofits from remote areas of Bihar and Jharkhand to the very good areas of Mumbai. And this has just widened my worldview. It has just opened my perspective. And I've become more empathetic and more aware of the social problems. From here, I believe that I will remain committed to volunteering. And it will be so because the desire to volunteer, the desire to help people only increases with each experience. And I would like to end by saying that I am 100% certain that anybody who just starts volunteering, no matter how small, if he continues that, he will find his heart's calling in the social impact sector and will only evolve as a volunteer. Thank you.
A big thank you to our volunteers for that. As we move on to our table read section, I will hand it over to Vijaya.
Thank you, Shreya. Ladies and gentlemen, when we started out about the 10th year, I had to take a moment back to think, what is it that we wanted to really showcase in the 10 years? And how would I pack it in 60 minutes? I already realized we're overrunning on time. Putting it in a speech and hearing myself say everything that I wanted to say would be a moment of self-indulgence. But the 10 years at Toolbox have been a roller coaster, and nothing that I would trade for anything. And if we wanted to bring all those elements that went into making Toolbox and bringing us to where we are today, and I couldn't think of 4 better people to do this. People who came here as volunteers, who became advisors, but in the process became friends of Toolbox, and more importantly, became friends of mine. So to present the Toolbox table read, are four fantastic individuals led by the lovely Sonali Datta, who in her day job is at Star TV, has gone on to be our advisor for our nonprofits and at Toolbox, and is really has managed this segment of the evening. Shreya, who in the short time at Toolbox has gone on to volunteer with us, hopefully for a very, very long time to come. Bhavya, who came to us as a volunteer. He is now our data and tech advisor, who is a data scientist at Citibank by day, but really has been instrumental in driving a data-driven culture for us at Toolbox. And finally, Abhinav Bansal, who's part of the Toolbox task force when he's not a senior consultant at Ernst & Young. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting before you the Toolbox table read with Sonali, Shreya, Bhavya, and Abhinav.
Thank you so much, Vijaya, for that. I will begin by reading a few words on bringing Toolbox to India, the journey, and why we wanted to go beyond venture philanthropy, in the words of Sandeep Nayak. When we started Toolbox, we said, where are the biggest gaps and where can we help nonprofits the most? We went and asked all the nonprofits. They all raised their hands and said, we need capital, so if you can help us with fundraising, we're done. To this we said, we are going to help you out with everything else but fundraising. So now tell us what your problems are. Charles and I started this organization back in 2008, 2009. We started contemplating how we could go and build capacity for nonprofits, and then we went around asking people to fund our thinking around capacity building. To be honest, people had a blank expression. Nobody really understands why just giving capital to an organization does not necessarily mean that that capital finds its way in the most efficient manner to create maximum impact to the final beneficiary. I have the benefit of being an investor. When we look at companies or when we invest into companies, the first thing we look at is not what that additional invested capital is going to do to the end customer, but we look at how do we build a strong, sustainable organization with the right back office so that the front office can perform much more efficiently. If you can really identify the issues that are creating a bottleneck for an organization to scale, and if you are able to solve those issues, you will suddenly see the inflection point that happens at the organization. I believe that our vector of credibility at Toolbox comes from what we have consistently maintained as our core principle, which is that we will tell you as it is, how it is, to our NPO partners. There was zero bias and 100% objectivity in what we were doing, which was extremely liberating for us. I think our journey at Toolbox has been phenomenal, as giving time and skills brings in a multiplier effect. It is never shallow, and above all, we could democratize opportunities for people who wanted to give us their skills. At one point of time, we were only two people in our boardroom thinking about this concept, but today, in a place like this, with so many in a room helping us with our vision, the journey of impacting masses of people in India has just begun. This was our aim, our focus, to solve real problems faced by NPOs. Just like any other journey, there were ups and downs, and it was not very easy, and it took a long time. 3 years informally, and 10 years formally, and here we are today. I'm excited at what we can achieve together, and looking forward to the next 10 at Toolbox India. And with that, let me hand it over to Sonali.
Thank you, Shreya. Driving skilled volunteering. What no one tells you, you do not know whom to ask. It's an honor to speak in the words of a woman I've come to admire and adore, Vijaya Balaji. From starting off as a finance professional with an MNC, I had switched lanes and worked with high school students when I returned to Mumbai in early 2005. After a couple of years of doing that, as I stood on the brink of turning 40, I knew I wanted to do something that would make a difference. A chance conversation at dinner led me to meet two people who could not be more contrasting in their interactions with me, but both of whom prepared me for not only what I would go on to do, but go on to love. From a desk offered graciously as a workplace by a global pharma company, a carton filled with all that I needed to know, and a laptop, I was ready to begin. Skilled volunteering, pro bono consulting, these became my daily chants. People politely nodded. Nonprofit leaders tried to decipher what I was saying. And yet, it wasn't until the first turning point when Noshir Dadrawala took Toolbox India and its idea to handpicked NPOs that we saw the first set of signups. Over the years, I have lost count on the number of volunteers that came into our fold. Some have gone on to elite institutions for further studies. Some have been global leaders. Some are CEOs from Japan, some curious French students, and some really bright Indian corporate talent. And yet, all of our volunteers had one thing in common: an invisible cloak of humility. Skilled volunteering calls for persistence, negotiation, understanding, responsible advice. We came together without a single playbook, and yet over the years, through trials and experiments, we have found our feet. Today, 10 years later, we serve a community of 1,000 NPOs across urban and rural India, and we continue to draw skilled volunteers who perhaps find meaning in giving back to society. Back to you, Shreya.
Thank you, Sonali. What I will be speaking on next is something essential for organizations to grow: money matters. Here are a couple of sentences from the May 2021 Bridgespan report, an important takeaway of which is that if NGOs are to grow and sustain their impact and survive unforeseen shocks, unrestricted funding is vital. We began like every other organization, a group of friends who put in their energies and money in seeding Toolbox India. Offers of support came in from so many places and unexpected quarters, as we not only extended pro bono support to others, we also received and continue to receive pro bono support till date. Still, beyond all of this, for Toolbox India to grow, we needed the philanthropic capital to sustain our operations and continue our mission. At a time when there was not much of capital that went into programs like ours, a meeting with Vidya Shah and Nagma Mullah at the Edelgive Foundation proved to be a turning point in our journey. To meet with funders who understood our work was the shot in the arm that we needed. To be funded by them was another matter altogether. It was that ecstatic moment that you only read about. Over the next 5 years, the Edelgive Foundation would go on to fund Toolbox India for its work and spoke about our work at every possible opportunity, which built our visibility. Soon to follow, General Atlantic partners began to support our work. And it was only a matter of time before the General Atlantic Foundation began to fund the programs in India. We were privileged to be recognized and funded by organizations who practiced broad-based philanthropy, supporting our work with the full realization that we did not work at a community level. Yet, the belief in our hypothesis that building the organization will ultimately translate into improved last-mile delivery and impact has allowed us to scale our work. Our operations have been possible primarily due to the understanding of philanthropy capital providers who recognize that skilled volunteering can be and is an optimal capacity building solution to bootstrapped nonprofit organizations. While program delivery agents are the volunteers, the backbone of the organization is made up of people. The systems and processes have a cost attached, which must be funded and tracked like every other program that is funded. What we proved is that the model can be developed and designed to deliver at scale at an optimal cost. Thank you. And with that, I hand it over to Bhavya.
Are we able to hear Bhavya?
We're not able to hear Bhavya.
Shreya, would you like to do the honors?
Yes, sure, I can do that. Okay, rules of engagement. A recent conversation with an organization in Agra, Uttar Pradesh, left us thoughtful when they said that they had attended one of our sessions and were looking for OD support from Toolbox India. I was embarrassed as I could not recall having known them at all. When I last checked, we were partnering with 600 NPOs, which meant we had undertaken at least one pro bono project with them. The number of organizations who had a touch point with us were closer to nearing 1,000. When the Toolbox India founders said that we ought to reach out to more, working with 100 organizations seemed impossible 10 years ago and was a point of discussion each time the team met with them. As we look back, one is able to recall the euphoria when we could deliver 100 projects in a year, which of course would never have been possible but for the faith and trust that these organizations placed in us. Our guidelines to our volunteers were simple: be objective, understand the organization and its ethos, and collaborate sitting on the same side as the NPO while working on a project at Toolbox India. Through it all, we continued to introduce new ways of building our relationships with our NPO partners as we tried to increase our sphere of support to them. Dialogues at Toolbox India, which transitioned into digital dialogues at Toolbox India, brought everyone together to discuss those challenges, which were not unique to each one, but common across many organizations. When we are asked about our network, we simply state that the nonprofit organizations associated with Toolbox India are not a network of organizations we work with. They are the relationships which we have built on the bedrock of mutual trust and collaboration over time. Thank you. Abhinav, over to you.
Thank you, Shriya. The next section is Outliers of Change, and I'll be speaking about some of the volunteers who have created a significant impact over the last 10 years. From Shireen, Kureen, Rahul, to Tejasvi, Yash, Varun, Yudhvir, and to Niharika, Satvik, Amit, Nishant, Akshay, Mohit, Mudit, and Abhinav. These are but a few of the names of those whom we welcomed into our fold at Toolbox India. The talent pool of volunteers we drew changed alongside the way Toolbox India changed its course in the last decade. Our early years saw volunteers who came from senior management and leadership positions, bringing in decades of expertise and who were masters of their domains. As the years went by, we found ourselves inundated with requests from volunteers who were the leaders of tomorrow, spanning across marquee organizations from consulting, tech startups, private equity, and investment banking. Toolbox India began to work with the young Turks. What struck us was their quickness to grasp, sharp intellect, and unapologetic attitude to inefficiency, and a joie de vivre which only the age that they belonged to brings with them. Here was a generation that understood the place of privilege they came from and the divisions that existed in the world. We saw a brigade of them work through their lunch hours, armed with their laptops, young, ambitious. And I often marveled at how quickly they knew what had to be done from the sketchy description of the problem I would place before them. 45 minutes later, the analysis was complete, and off they would go on the weekend to work on what was required of them. In contrast, Kalpana, Rachna, Swati, Naveen, Kureen, Sridhar, and the supremely sarcastic Samir brought the quiet maturity and the wisdom of experience as business leaders, steering the conversations with founders and management teams of our NPO partners. We learned from and with them and took so much from those experiences that they collectively brought. Outliers of Change became our title to those of our volunteers who consistently rose to the need of volunteering at Toolbox each time. It was our way of saying, you made it count, and in doing so, you were our outlier of change. The next section is The World is a Global Village, Bridging Geographies, Not Intent. I saw him come into my office a month after I joined Toolbox India. He looked like any other backpacking European traveler with a staple rumpled linen shirt and cotton trousers. Quick introductions followed, only for me to discover that while visiting India, he spent time talking to a bunch of nonprofits during the piloting of our program. And as he was returning, Sebastian left me with a question. Could others experience what he had seen and learned? It would go on to become the beginning of a bunch of French engineering students who came visiting India and our offices, as well as visiting our nonprofits. They learned about malnutrition in Mehndi, traded croissants for vada pav, and all armed with an unending supply of hand sanitizers and mineral water. empathy, and a thirst for knowledge began on their journeys of discovery and inspiration, and what it would take to create a more inclusive world. We welcomed our volunteers who were the candidates of a global leadership program at a multinational insurance company. They were unsure about what to expect when we told them to trade their leather shoes and power suits for sneakers and casual dressing. With digital translators, they navigated not just the language, but the culture shock that one experiences when you touch the ground in India, as well as understanding the nonprofits and their programs and challenges that they were assigned to work with. We learned from them as much as they learned from us. Thank you. And with that, I will hand it over to Sonali.
Thank you, Abhinav. Allow me to take all of us behind the scenes into the brand building that happened at Toolbox. The leap we made opened a world of possible. When we first introduced Toolbox India, we worked with the early beginnings of bridging human capital, which was what we were about. But as we grew, we knew that Toolbox India had gone through the magic of metamorphosis, moving through all the changes over time. Structural, oscillating between freezing, refreezing strategies, programs, going through a slow transformation through the pupa larva stages before the butterfly emerged. Toolbox India Foundation's rebranding was undertaken in 2020 and has led us to reflect in order to, as we state, open a world of possible. For us, it has meant that the possibilities are many. It inspires us to explore what more could be done, a different and better way of doing things. We are overcoming our own resistance and offering up new paradigms in how we think about Toolbox India and its contributions to the social sector. And with that, it's back to Bhavya.
Thank you, Sonali. I'll now read from the chapter, Scaling Virtually, Technology and How We Got People to Volunteer Rise. The timing of building Toolbox India's skilled volunteering was an opportune time as the growth trend in the skilled volunteering programs in India mirrored Toolbox India's growth and development. The question we asked ourselves was whether we scale our stakeholder outreach and introduce improved project management efficiency by leveraging technology. This question heightened our curiosity. We went from sketches to mock-up in record time. In 2019, we launched the prototype titled the Toolbox India Portal, a digital platform that supported nonprofits to achieve their goals faster by connecting them virtually with volunteers and managing projects online. Supported by the functionality the portal had to offer, we achieved the milestone year of 100 projects in a given financial year. 2020 required volunteers and nonprofits to adapt quickly to the disruption that COVID-19 unleashed, as new requirements of support emerged from our NPO partners. We continue to engage with teams of volunteers and NPOs to not just facilitate, but foster the exchanges of ideas and solutions, such that remote volunteering did not mean we would distance ourselves and replace the experience with technology. What we experienced was the efficiency that technology can bring, the scale it can achieve, where scale meant that we could reach organizations and were no longer bound by physical geographical limitations. With the new enhanced capabilities, we choose to call our platform Volunteer Rise, which is a call to action. We wanted to galvanize people into rising to the call of volunteering, which, time and again, more than ever, has proven an essential need for civil society participation and contributing to nation building. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavya. A deeper look at a couple of NGOs as we go through ground realities, impact, and the bottom of the pyramid. Alert India is a Mumbai-based NPO that has been working towards the treatment and rehabilitation of leprosy patients, tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS programs. One of the first things that you notice about Anthony Sami, founder and CEO at Alert India, is his unfailing enthusiasm and resolve to continue with his mission. His willingness to constantly challenge himself, his team, his efforts to steer his organization through changing times has made Alert India one of our most trusted. Over the years, we have worked with Alert India from strengthening systems, processes, program operations, fundraising, as well as sustainability. Let me take you to another sparkling example, Shangamitras. Spunky is how I would describe her. Anyone who met Shangamitra for the first time would peg her as a college professor with twinkling eyes that make for the perfect smokescreen. Over the years, Shrishti Education Trust has worked with children from underserved urban communities of India's capital city, Delhi, and helped them complete school education. Toolbox India worked with Shrishti for over 5 years, steadily building internal capabilities. Since then, Shangamitra has gone on to the added responsibility towards empowering women in rural Uttarakhand. These are but two examples of our NPO partners. We are grateful to each of our partners with whom we have had the privilege to associate with. And with that, my pleasure to hand it back to Vijaya Balaji.
Thank you, Shreya, Sunali, Bhavya, and Abhinav, for that wonderful rendition of what has been a moment of indulgence on my part when I set out to write what I thought were the chapters at Toolbox India. I think as we near the end of the 10 years at Toolbox, it's really a question of what lies next for us. And I remember Sandeep when last year when he brought this up, and he brought it up again. I think to look at really where we go from Toolbox India to Toolbox Bharat. I think we look back at working with a large number of partners in the course of these last 10 years, which has really allowed us to see them grow and to reach a place where they no longer need us. And that has been an absolute fantastic revelation. But now to go to those organizations where there's work, but don't have the stories and who still need the support to bring their stories to life. I think that's where Toolbox will hopefully find its way and tread down that new uncharted path for ourselves. Before we end the segment and we leave you with something about the citizens of tomorrow, I do want to take a few minutes to really sum up a little bit of what the last 10 years have been for me. When I came here, I found myself in a job which really isn't a job, but I found myself there completely by accident. And it became something that I just completely fell in love with. And I don't think I would trade any of it, the tears, the anxiety, the insecurity, the frustration, and those moments of exhilaration each time we saw something that was like a win for us at Toolbox India. Because I think in doing so, I think one, it just connected me to this universe of fantastic people who just have been so generous with their support. And what we see today with our volunteers and people who are there on this show right now on this event are just a few of so many who have been there. But more than anything else, I think more than the job, it also, I learned so much, not just about the role, about Toolbox, but I learned a lot about myself. And that became a fascinating discovery of what one could do, what one is capable of, and how to push oneself and push others. And I'm always humbled by the kind of support that we've received. Our first the first few years when our auditor did work for us pro bono, when Mr. Premanand Shivgunde of PCS, Justin at Baruchan Partners, who still date do a lot of our institutional compliance work pro bono for us. The kindness and generosity displayed by our non-profit partners, Shweta Chari, the support that she and Toy Bank have extended to us. Nagma, Vidya, the It'll Give team, who have been who brought our work to life and put us up on the map. Noshir Dadrawala at Center for the Advancement of Philanthropy, who really brought what Toolbox does uh, to the non-profits in Mumbai. Janani at Avagama and Bandra West Pictures, Guinea, who helped us with our logo when we were looking to create the event. Over the years, my team members, Lakshmi, Tiasha, Manushi, Alvin, who helped us get our first bank account at Central Bank of India, which we still operate. The journey has been peppered with so much of support. Vikram Nerurkar, who helped me out with the first website that came together, and so many people, institutional, individual, the non-profit partners, who took a chance with us, who put their faith in us, and I just think that for any of us who want to do something, we have to know that we can't do it alone. It really takes a huge circle of support. And I have had the absolute privilege and pleasure to have all of that. Rachel at General Atlantic Partners, who's always been quietly there, helping us through the years on anything that Toolbox has needed. My founders, Sandeep and Charles, who have been so very generous in handing over the organization to me, allowing me to find my way, to make my mistakes, and to have the faith in me that I will get it right at some point. My board, M. Sridhar, my favorite part of the story, where he was, under whom I had worked many years ago back in the day, who's on the board. Manjula, who continues to be sort of the voice of reason to my madness. Deepa, who came as our first consultant and really got us to think about a lot more. The names, if I have to call out, would require another session altogether. So I can only just say thank you, and to everybody who believe in us, who give us the opportunity to serve all our nonprofits, to all my volunteers who find it in their calendars and in their hearts to work with us. So on that note, I would like to say that this is me formally saying thank you very much. And in the words of Captain Kirk, to see and go where no one has gone before in the next 10 years or so. We will end the note on something that we want to leave for all of us to remember and to realize that what we do today is what is being inherited by the citizens of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
If I were to see one change in the world, it would be this. Often people see animals as lesser intelligent creatures, but they never try to understand them in their own sense. In truth, one of the lesser important issues is something that I would want fixed sooner than later.
One change I would like to see in the world is more affordable education.
I would like to see less pollution in the world because it affects me and the community around me.
As a Kathak dancer and a painter, I dream of my world being full of creativity, more art, more music, and more cultural activities.
Sandeep, yes.
Before I hand it over to Shreya, I would be remiss in not thanking the wonderful communications team at Toolbox, led by the quiet Hiranya Singh, Vyoma, Disha, and Abhishek, who have been relentless in the last few months in putting things together for us. This event would not be possible but for the support of my fantastic, young, driven, motivated communications team. So take a bow of my communications team. On that note, back to you, Shreya.
I really echo that, Vijaya. Sandeep mentioned at the start of this event how every individual needs to contribute, really. And hearing from the amazing future of tomorrow really makes us aware of our collective responsibility in that regard. As we are near the end of the evening, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank every one of you for being here with us today. And I would also like to invite the CEO and Managing Director of Toolbox India, Vijay Balaji, to say a few words. Vijaya Balaji is the Managing Director and CEO of Toolbox India, as I mentioned, where she has been instrumental in growing the organization from 6 projects to over 600. She is recognized for being the force behind Toolbox India and has constantly endeavored to bring in the relevant capacity building solutions to the social impact sector. Her experience across multiple sectors has imparted a leadership style couched in emotional intelligence and made her adept at cross stakeholder collaboration. I myself have had the good fortune of working under her guidance earlier this year, and so it is my absolute pleasure to introduce her to you this evening.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Shreya. It's lovely hearing what you just said. Maybe I should just keep it with me for future reference. But really, honestly, there are no more speeches to be made because I think a lot has been said. I think for me, I count myself so very lucky. You know, I heard Vidya Shah at an event when she said, we feel good when we borrow, through our work, when we borrow the goodness of others. And I think I look back and I see what we do at Toolbox, it's just a small bit of what we do. When we see the amazing work that our non-profit organization, the organizations whom we partner with and whom we've not also partnered with, not because of anything else, we've not had the privilege and pleasure to work with them. But I think to get to come to work every day, where you are filled with a sense of purpose, is a blessing. It's hard, but maybe that's why the wins seem so much more sweeter. And I think the one thing that I think Toolbox India has been absolutely very, very lucky is the people that who have come together to make this happen. Uh, and uh, and I think that is truly the real wealth of what Toolbox is all about, beyond what we set out to do, because there will always be imperfections in what we do. But I think it is through those imperfections we learn, we get better, and we have to always believe that what we do will count, will make a difference. So that's it from me. I'm just I look forward to what lies next. I wait for new talent, new ideas, new energies, new volunteers, new nonprofits into Toolbox India. I know Sandeep will never let me rest easy because he's already put something out there. But for all of you who've joined us, I know some of you are at work, you're in different time zones. Thank you so much for being part of this event for this evening. We've overshot the time, so I will end now. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Have a lovely, wonderful, safe weekend. Thank you very much. Bye.